What's going on, guys? Welcome back to another episode of the Mental Corner podcast, the show where I bring on guests from all different backgrounds to talk all the things mental health. I'm your host, Harry Potvin, and today I have the absolute pleasure of being joined by Rachelle McCloud. Rachelle is an emotional wellness coach and a mental health therapist. In her work, she helps people get rid of the symptoms for anxiety, depression, and traumatic stress in as little as 2 to 6 months. Rachelle was so fun to have on, and I really want to thank her again for coming on and having this discussion with me. Now, if you're in Ontario, Canada, you know that those gyms are back and open, and man, we're trying to get rid of that pandemic weight, and it's hurting a little. I'm gonna be honest, but you know what? I welcome the pain. I welcome the soreness because it means that we're slowly getting back to normal. And wherever you are listening in the world, I hope that you are moving your body because that beautiful brain of yours deserves it. Now, before we get into the episode today, guys, you know the drill. If you're listening, please like, comment, share, subscribe, give 5 stars if you're on that podcast platform. Share with someone who might want to hear this episode. It's a really great one, and I can't wait for you to listen. I'll talk to you all very soon. Have a great rest of your day. Peace. We are good to go. Rachelle, what's going on? Thanks so much for joining me today.
Thank you for having me. It's fun
So
to
my
be here.
yeah, I'm happy for you to be. Wow, I can't talk today. What a great way to start the episode. I'm happy for This is so embarrassing. I'm happy that you're here too, Rachelle. Thank you. My first question for you, as I mentioned off camera, what got you inspired into doing like the emotional wellness business? Like what took you on that path?
Yeah, I didn't plan on being here. I'll tell you that. um, but gosh, I come from a family of a lot of trauma, um, and how this affects the brain is multifaceted, and how it was affecting me socially and emotionally and mentally was it just grew to be unmanageable. And so I had a pretty big mental health crisis in college. I cried my way through that. I had no idea then about mind body interventions. Crying is a fantastic intervention. I must have cried for weeks straight. And then I kind of popped out of it because I was able to do that healing work, and I was able to actually cry. I was kind of phobic of crying up until that point. So, but I just had to do it. So I made it through that, and I got married, had 3 small children. I became a therapist. That was kind of accidental as well. I just kind of went where the flow took me, and I had been journaling. I'd been doing lots of mental healthy things just because I needed them to function. And so I was just using them. And then I wanted to help people and wanted to talk to people. I got a degree in Spanish.
Mm.
So, but then after I became a therapist, I was really bad at it in my own assessment. And so I quit. I was mad and bitter. I can't believe I have a whole degree in this. But then I had another mental health crisis, and I didn't want to go to therapy because I was mad at everybody. And I ended up working with this woman for helping my son. He had a health issue that wasn't horrible, but it was obviously something was wrong, and nobody was helping me. And so the moms at the park told me, "Why don't you go see this woman?" So they kind of took me off the grid of traditional medicine because they weren't helping me. And I sat with this woman who was doing this really strange thing where she set my son on this little metal sheet, and this little machine was swinging around, and she would pass him vials, and she was doing some electromagnetic feedback thing that had my eyes open like saucers, and like I just did not know what this was
Mm.
and how I got myself into this. And she said, "Oh, he had this and this and this. I treated it electromagnetically, and make sure he's sensitive to this and this. So make sure you don't give him that anymore." And so I left with my eyes are saucers. I could not believe this, and I was just flabbergasted. So I went home and I was like, "Well, I already paid all this money. Let me not give him this and this." And the problem stopped in 3 days. And so that was like, holy cow. I don't know what happened there, but whatever that was, can we have a little bit more of that? Because we got a couple other issues. So I started seeing her, and that's really when she started seeing and I started talking about this mental health crisis. And I had just been diagnosed with obsessive compulsive disorder. Um, and she gave me this training DVD set for emotional freedom techniques. And she said, try this, it will change your life. And by that point, if she had told me to stand on my head and count backwards, I would have done so. So I tried it, and it was weird, but it wasn't therapy, so I was still really open to it. And so then I tried this little tapping thing when I was sleeping, and I was trying to go to sleep, and I had racing thoughts, and I was in a really heightened state of distress and worry and anxiety. And I started doing this tapping thing. 30 seconds, I yawned. I tried it again. I fell right to sleep. I woke up the next morning, and I was like, I've slept. What else can I try this on? And so that was a really big pivotal moment for me. I started using it. I started getting rid of symptoms. I started healing. My life started working again. That mental health crisis that I was in was massive. It was very massive. I could not solve regular problems. I was so overwhelmed. It was horrible. And I really thought it was a financial crisis or a marital crisis. I was 30. I mean, I was like with a degree and educated, and I could not figure out anything. And so I ended up almost homeless. If my mother had not picked us up, I could not solve any problems. So my life started working, and I was like, this is awesome. This is actually a thing. And then I started getting rid of the OCD. I started realizing that I have complex childhood trauma I need to deal with. I just started cleaning up my life, and it worked. Everything I tried it on, it was like, panic attacks were showing up. I would use this for that. And then the panic attacks would stop. I wouldn't even have to worry about them anymore. And then racing thoughts, if they would show up, social anxiety, I was just like, come at me. And so I just was walking confidently in my life, like, right. What can get me here, and when we have these disorders, you can get lost in your own brain. You can get lost in and feel attacked and feel like you're on the run from your own symptoms, from your own brain. And here I had this tool that was I could not be jailed by my brain. And I was just living large, and I thought it was emotional freedom techniques. I thought that really was the intervention that was just magical, and everyone needed to do emotional freedom techniques, period. But as I kept practicing and building my practice, I got trained in EMDR, and I saw that there were some similar principles, and I started getting trained in thought-filled therapy, and there were principles that were similar. And then I happened upon Dan Siegel, who took me down the rabbit hole of interpersonal neurobiology, and learned this is how brains work. These interventions are actually helping the brain at the part of the healing process that needs the actual support, where this healing process gets shut down, and where symptoms don't heal, but they get blocked, and then they repeat and build up and cause problems and all that stuff. If we can really get into that one part of the process and really open it up, everything, the healing process works beautifully. And these interventions really work powerfully to support that part of the process. And then the rest of the process doesn't typically need a lot of help. It doesn't need any help. That's a big statement, but out of 95% of the stuff, it's like does not need help. There's probably about 5% that does. But it's like the work then for me became very simplified. How do I help that part of the process open up? And that's the part where we have all this information coming up from our body and our mind, our ears and our smell and through our mouth, our taste buds. And we have all this information rising up to inform us of what's going on in life. And some of that is registering as danger and pain. And the survival system reacts and shuts that down and gets you away from it. And so it can't make it through the process because all that information is trying to get to the front of your brain where you can problem solve it and understand it and resolve it and create new ways of being with the information that you're receiving from the world. And so when that process shuts down and is blocked, we can't adjust in life. We can't, and then the body doesn't stop sending the messages. Like it's like, hey, let me send that to you. And it's like, no, you can't. And that shutdown can last for a lifetime. And so that's really why we're seeing us carry all this baggage of anxiety, depression, and traumatic stress for so long, is because this once this process is started and it keeps trying to resolve it, and it can stay closed for a whole lifetime. Right. It's something that it's like we can intentionally help. Sometimes we can accidentally help. Like for me, I accidentally cried for a couple of weeks, right? That is helping that part of the process. That's a lot of work to do. And I just worked through an episode. I did not actually resolve the root cause of my disorder.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So it came back to get me later. So,
Right.
and very harshly. So anyway, I could go on and on, but and I will.
Yeah,
I
perfect. Perfect. So basically, like what most of us do then, correct me if I'm wrong, is like when we're trying to deal with symptoms and things like that to try and help ourselves. I don't even know how to like make this an analogy. Let's say you have like a dirty counter and you kind of just put a paper towel on it,
Yeah.
and then visibly there's nothing there. And then you take the towel off, you throw it away, you're like, oh, I'm good. And then the next day you realize the counter's sticky because those
Right.
root problems are still there. Is that kind of what we
Yeah.
do?
Yeah, very similar. And there's nothing wrong with putting the towel down there, and that can be a really helpful part of the process. But it is just a part; it's not the complete work. And when I'm working with people, I teach them how to resolve their symptoms because that makes their everyday life better, and
Right.
it makes it more it makes it easier to navigate their life, and it's very empowering. And then as soon as they have that skill, now we're going to take that skill and we're going to go in and we're going to do the deeper work while we still manage the daily symptoms. So both is important, but we can't just stay at that level. Otherwise we get those sticky spots and then we spiral out. And
Right. Yeah, exactly. Now, when you look back, when you were in this time of crisis, did you acknowledge that in the moment, or was it kind of hard to see when you were in it?
oh, it was totally almost impossible for me to see when I was in it. And
Right.
I look back and a lot of times the more successful we are, the more we have these ramps that we've set up in our mind that really will shoot us into activity and positivity and strategies that keep you moving. And then part of my complex childhood trauma was about always needing to be um, positive and optimistic. Like that was a very narrow place I had to live in. And so even though I was in a terrible place, I was smiling, I was happy, I was being as productive as I could be. It wasn't all adding up to be anything that was effective, but I was doing the things. And so and then I was already a therapist, right? I
Mm.
mean, it just I think it's hard when you're on the inside looking out and trying to make sense of everything. And I remember people trying to say things to me, and I can see that they were like, something's off, something's off, you know, but I couldn't pick it up. And I needed the illusion that everything was okay as well. So it just really made everything kind of come together in a very powerful and overwhelming and stuck way.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, I can imagine.
It got
When
me.
I know, I bet. Now, when you were introduced to like this whole practice, like the tapping and all of that, was there ever a point where you're like, "What is this?" Because it's
Oh
so
yeah.
different from what we're taught.
Yes, I was, but I'm the what kind of person that if it's strange and out of the box, I'm more attracted to it.
Mm.
So that was working for my good. I like to be on the cutting edge. I like to, in some things, not fashion. You will not see me on the cutting edge of fashion. Um,
I feel that. I feel that. I'm not revolutionizing anything in the
no,
fashion industry.
but I like to think different thoughts. I like to explore things from other people's perspectives. That's why I started learning Spanish. That I wanted to see life through the eyes of Spanish speakers, you know. And so here she presented this with me, and I already saw that, you know, whatever she says I need to be doing. But the fact that it was way different than anything else was really, really appealing to me. And then I got instant gratification.
Mm.
I mean, I instantly, within 2 minutes, and that's giving you a long time because that intervention takes 30 seconds. It was my first time using the intervention. So I think I was like looking at the chart, making sure I'm at the right tapping points, you know. So maybe it took me a minute. I'm being generous, but in 2 minutes, I was knocked out. I never had that problem again.
Mm.
So it was like magic. That was all I needed to get in. And then I really just started working and then with this. And, you know, I'm not afraid to be weird and different. So I would use this whenever I wanted to, like you'll see me in the shopping, and if I'm shopping and I run into a symptom, I will use this there. Or because brains have challenges every once in a while, you know, just like people do, you know, because we have brains. And I like to support it, and I like to experiment. Like, what if I help you like this? What are you going to do then? And sure enough, all of a sudden it's just, and I just am such a fan of my brain now
Mm.
and other people's brains. And so um, I was impressed by the different, like how strange this was, but I got over that quickly after the first experiment.
Yeah, right. We
Yeah,
often like we neglect our brains so much.
totally.
I think that's it's such a shame. Like I think I told one of my best friends this. I think it's like the brain is honestly like one of the most overrated and underrated like organs ever, because overrated in the sense that we put ourselves to like this unrealistic high standard compared to everyone else, but then underrated in the sense that we have no idea what we're capable of if we just join forces with it. I like
Yes.
when I was struggling, I just thought like figure it out, man. My brain's like I'm trying. It's,
Yes.
there was a miscommunication there.
Yes, absolutely. And the most therapy is directed at the front of the brain, the thinking center, you know, we are supposed to, where we do figure things out. And so we like that part of the brain because it really is fantastic. But that's not where this problem is when we're talking about symptoms of anxiety, depression, and traumatic stress. The problem is further back.
Mm.
It's really with that survival system. You know, it's the checkpoint of all the information coming through. It's the part of the brain. If you grab a hot pot, if it's burning your skin, that's the part of you that says pain, drop it. That happens instantly before you can even think about that. And so here, you know, when this information's coming through, if that brain says drop it, get away from there, if that survival system says that, you don't get to hold those thoughts anymore. You don't get to hold on to those emotions anymore. You don't get to let them come through to the part of the brain that can solve the problem, that can really resolve the issues and create. And so when we work specifically and directly with that survival system, we can really see transformation happen within seconds or minutes. And that part of the brain really doesn't care what we think or what we know. It really is listening to the body.
Mm.
That's what, and it wants to hear, are we safe or are we not safe? That's all it cares about. And so when we start using the body to send the message that we're safe, it's okay, we can let healing happen, let this stuff through the pathways, it responds, and it does. And when you have the power to influence that massively powerful part of yourself, it's really, really empowering.
Right. Now, is there a way to achieve that through talk therapy at all?
You know, there's some good things about talk therapy that are specific brain work things. Like if you're telling someone your story and they feedback your experience to you with a lot of empathy, and they get it just right, like if you're saying all this stuff and then they say it sounds like you really are feeling isolated right now, And then the other person, it's a direct hit, and they say, yes, that's as Dan Siegel explains it in my interpretation of it, the prefrontal cortex will start squirting onto the limbic system calming chemicals,
What a
and that
nice
allows
analogy.
it. Say that again.
What a nice analogy.
Yeah. And so that is like some top down work, right? I mean, that's where the front of the brain is kind of the top, it's the boss in lots of ways. I'm not always the best boss, because it's the one at the top taking in all the information and trying to make things, and but it's like the body is all this, the workers and the material that needs to come up, and if the stuff doesn't come up, the material and the information doesn't come up, this part isn't going to make very great things, because it's not getting all the information from the people on the street, your ears, your nose, your mouth, your body. And so it's very limited in that. And when we try to do this work with the top telling the bottom what everything it's going to do, do it. The bottom is like, nah, I'd like to help you, but my stomach hurts. Or, there's just, it's not in agreement. It's going in a total, just like if at work, in workplaces where the boss tells everybody what to do, they don't know what's going on there. The solution doesn't fit. And everybody's like, yeah, no, but we'll pretend, we'll shake our head at you, but we're not going to do it. And that's what happens here with these ideas, these symptoms, these goals we have. We want to go there, but the body's like, I can't, it's not safe to go there. But when we can resolve the body's issues with that goal, all of a sudden you can do the goal.
Right.
If we can resolve your subconscious mind's problem with your goal, all of a sudden you're in alignment, you can go do the goal. Everyone's like, yeah, that goal sounds like a good idea now. But so I think with talk therapy, it's a lot of top down communication and learning and strategizing. That's totally for the front of the brain. And we really need to bring the stuff up into the front. And so I think that with talk therapy, this is a really great place to get support and strategies, and to really get a lot of problem solving done. It's not, and I wish we would integrate these strategies with talk therapy, because then we could do the anxiety, depression, trauma work at the same time as we're doing the support, the strategizing, and all these things. That's really, for me, the ideal place. But since that's not melded everywhere yet, what I find is that if people will do the brain work of resolving their anxiety, depression, traumatic stress, which actually changes how their brain is functioning, and it really puts their brain in an optimized flow or optimized state for strategizing and learning and all these things. That's a great time for talk therapy as well, because now your brain is working, you're ready to do stuff on your marriage, to do work on your marriage, and strategize about the conversations that aren't working and how we can, get some new tips. Let's try them. If your survival system hates the new tips because of all of your childhood trauma or the trauma in your marriage earlier, you can get all the tips you want. And if the rest of you is not in agreement with this great idea, it's not going to happen. And that's why I think we're seeing so much not success wherever we're not getting success in therapy and talk therapies. It's right here. It's because we haven't really perfected the art of combining all of this neuro feedback from our bodies, the neuroception, the information about our marriage, about our children, about our feelings about our children, about our past issues that our brain is bringing into this, and getting that to the front of the brain where we can bring alignment and create those new ways of being and being ready to take those new goals. I think as we perfect that, not necessarily perfect that, but really hone that skill, then all these other doors start opening for us. And these skills are things people can learn to do for themselves very easily, very well, even with just a tiny bit of skill. And so I'm really looking forward to how this impacts and changes therapy, emotional wellness, personal confidence, goal reaching, dream life creation, all these areas that we're all really hungering for and working towards.
Right. Now, why is there a reason that it hasn't been implemented yet?
I think it's more has to do with just how humans do with new things,
Right.
It was really cool when someone sailed across the ocean and it wasn't actually a drop off,
Mm-hmm.
but does that mean I want to do that yet? No, you guys go ahead first. We'll see how you do. If you come back, I might consider it, and I think that that's a big deal with how therapy is. We've been doing therapy for a really long time, and we have expectations and we have ways of being, and people and talk therapists have some really phenomenal skills. Um, and so I think that it's just as people take steps out of the box and into what we're finding with neuroscience, and I think that they'll see a whole new door opening. So some of this is just experiential, like, I'm just going to go try it. Some of this is hearing about other people's success stories. Um, so I think it's happening, and it can't not happen. There's so much research behind this. There's so many studies comparing for anxiety, depression, and traumatic stress, results from talk therapy, and then something like EFT or thought field therapy or EMDR. There's a massive difference in the results, the long-term benefits, even cortisol levels and bio measures. It's just too much. So we're kind of we're not done with talk therapy at all, because it's beautiful, but we're seeing that we need to reorganize what's happening, and we will.
Right. And plus, talk therapy that just doesn't work for everybody. I think that's the other thing is
Exactly.
like, if it doesn't work for you, you go in and you're like, oh man, I'm broken forever.
Yes. Yes. And that's really a shame. And it's really wonderful, because when you work with this part of the brain that opens up all this healing, that the brain's natural healing ability, um, you don't have to talk to work with that part of the brain.
Right.
There are traumas I have never heard from my clients, and we heal that trauma. Um, that so this is really opening many doors for people, because some traumas are too painful, too still full of so much anguish and horror, that nobody people can't even barely think about it. And now we're finding ways to help people heal this stuff without thinking about it, without talking about it. I mean, it's really powerful, and it's really opening a lot of doors. And then you'll find these people talking about their trauma afterwards, because it's not painful anymore,
Right.
and it's a story, they're sharing it, and they're using it for their own healing and the healing of others, and if they choose, so. But in the beginning of that, I really, for many people whose trauma is too intense, I really steer them away from talking about it. Let's talk about it after you're healing, after you're healed with this, after this has resolved, after we've gotten this all the way through your healing pathways, and we see evidence that your brain can look at this without shooting agony and pain, and shutting you down and freezing and creating more flashbacks and all these things. Then let's go ahead and talk about it, right? um, but and which is wonderful, because we can work through traumatic memory in about 20 minutes to 40 minutes.
Mm.
Some of them that are more complex, it can take a couple of sessions. And then some of them that are the most complex, sometimes it's like the brain will a traumatic event happens, and then the brain starts weaving protection around it. And that protection gets bigger and bigger and bigger, and it's protecting us, but it also, this protection is also what prevents us from doing some of the things in our life that we want to. So it's helpful, but it's really hurtful and limiting as well. And so a lot of the work, especially with disorders, this is kind of the same thing that happens with disorders. It's a difference between having a symptom and then your brain working to create a whole protection layer around it, which is a lot of times more symptoms and a whole disorder. But a lot of times this is, we need to work through um, the protection layers to be able to get to the root issue. That root issue, when we get there, is a 20 to 40-minute resolution. This right here, we have to work with the brain and really strategize and support it and help it to take down the protection layers. We don't want to be in there and take things down. You do not want to take down your brain's support and strategies. That
Mm.
is, because it is there for a reason. That is actually helping and protecting you. We want to do enough healing work that the brain itself says, I don't think I need this here anymore. and then it will get rid of it. And then we see a whole nother picture and we go in and we help some more, and the brain will keep doing that until we can get in there. And so it's just not a long process.
Right. So how does this is such a stupid question. How does this all work? Like like saying, you can overcome your trauma in like 20 minutes. For people listening, they're like, "What?" Like how does this whole process operate?
Yeah, well, if you think about how the brain is an electrical process, right?
Mhm.
It's an electrical thing. Most of what we've done with mental health therapy is a lot about thought work and about the chemical interactions and the chemical imbalances that we have, um, which are real, um, but they were created, right? All these thoughts and feelings and traumas create um, this this emotional chemical concoction that becomes a fixture and something that we're used to or addicted to. It's like conditioned to. um, but when we're working with the brain, and we can help the brain do its own functions, it's going to work at the speed of the brain, the natural speed of the brain, which is like lightning speed, because it's an electrical process. And we're
Mhm.
talking about neurons firing and wiring, and we're talking about that whole thing, that if we can remove this block in the process, the brain will move at its own pace, which is electrical. And so when I do this in the first session with people, I do this very, very slow. I do it on this very specific project, where we gather data about how intense this is, where they feel in their body, all these things, measurables, and then we apply an intervention, and then we check all the things again. And a lot of times it comes down. Most like 90% of the time it will come down. If it doesn't come down, we've got the wrong intervention. I'll hand them a different intervention. Let's try that one. My longest intervention is about 2 minutes. So, and we're just working with the body to send the signals to the survival system that we're safe, we're okay, let healing happen. And once it does that, it will really move, it will let the healing happen, and then you'll see everything happen. And once the information, right? So let's say we're working on yelling at their kids, right? So we right there in there, maybe we find there's experiencing some flashbacks or some negative talk. Let's say it's some negative inner talk. If your kids act like this, they're going to disrespect you when they're in their teenagers, and you're going to be shamed by your mom if she saw you and your dad, their children getting away with this, right? And now it's, you've got panic coming up. And so in our session, we're focused on that, and we'll use an intervention right there. And then we'll notice that if it's working, we'll notice the body start calming. We'll notice the thoughts start slowing down. We'll start noticing new perspectives coming in that are like, duh for most of us,
Mm.
right? But when we're in those survival states where we don't have access to the brilliant part of our brain, because the survival system actually shuts that part of the brain down, because we don't need to think right now, we need to survive.
Right.
I'll tell you what to do and we'll get out of this, right? But we want that brilliance available to us. And so when we start seeing great new thoughts coming in, new perspectives, like, I'm on the fly with this, but I have lots of clients tell me that I don't think she would be that mad. Or if she was, it wouldn't be that big of a deal because this or that. Like their reasoning center turns on, and you see them start reasoning instead of panicking. And then you start seeing solutions showing up, and that tells you their brain is moving into solution mode. Great, that's the front of the brain. Our job here is done. Let's go back into this moment and see what else, is there anything else distressing you in there? Oh, the negative thought of I'm a terrible mom. Okay, where do we feel that in your body? Where, because our body experiences these thoughts just like our emotion, like just like we do emotionally. So there's always a show of these negative thoughts in our body. We just got to find them, and that's a lot of what I teach people to do, is to
Mhm.
find that stuff. Our body is participating and wants to heal too. Um, and so when we find that I'm a bad mom, we can use an intervention with all of that stuff. We're basically picking that up and moving it through the brain's healing pathways. We're getting the survival system out of the way. We're using another part of the brain to move this stuff through. And the whole brain is just teamworking now. And so then we find that a lot of times that's usually a very heavy sensation, in the body. They'll feel it in their chest, a heaviness. I'm a bad mom. I'm checking afterwards. Can you still feel that? No, I can't feel that. Or it's a lot less. It's very faint. And then also new reasoning coming in, or times memories will start showing up where they were a good mom. And so that's the brain is like taking all this evidence and mixing it together in the front of the brain, like making a new cake, So it's just mixing all those ingredients in here, and then it starts generating new solutions that are in line with I am a good mom, as opposed to what comes up with I'm a bad mom, and I'm worrying about it. And many of us aren't even aware of these thoughts happening. They happen at lightning speed. They happen so fast that you can't even catch them. And so you just all of a sudden feel bad, and you're not certain why. But we can get that information. We can slow down. We can practice, and we can pull all this information up, make sure it gets through the healing pathways. We can escort it to its destination where it's trying to go anyway. So we can just really speed up that process and ensure that it happens, and that the survival system doesn't block it from healing. So that's a bit about what happens and why it's fast. The brain is fast.
Right. Yeah. I think the quote came from Mike Tyson. I don't know where he got it from, but he was talking about how when you joke or make a joke or just have a passing thought, the subconscious doesn't acknowledge the fact that it's a joke.
Correct.
So when you're like, oh, I'm such an idiot, or like, oh, I'm such a bad mom, your body goes, oh, you are actually.
That's
and
right.
Start to believe it.
That's right. That's right. And it's right there all the time. It's like, oh, and we have within our minds and our brain here a reticular activating system. And that part is what filters in to your life what you believe, and filters out what's irrelevant to you. And so that is constantly changing. And so and it literally, there are things that if your reticular activating system isn't looking for it, doesn't know that this is important, it will make it vanish from your awareness. It can be right in front of you, you will not see it. And so when we say I'm a stupid person, it's like, oh, okay, I'll show you that, and it brings it in, because it's not a thinking center. It's just, I just do my job. Oh, okay, I'll show you that. Or and that's why people use affirmations like I earn this much money a month annual, whatever. And because of this, that part says, oh, okay, I'll show you that. Now, when you have when you have an anxiety, depression, or trauma challenge or disorder, using positive affirmations can actually create more problems for you, because the reason you have an anxiety, depression, and trauma disorder is because this healing, problem-solving process is really having challenges functioning. And when we use an affirmation, we need to create a new way of being for your reticular activating system, right? And so that new way of being creation process is this pathway. And so if there's stuff in the back that needs to change and it can't get through, then the positive affirmation is forcing this change, but it's not completing. And so it's going over and over and over again. And pretty soon you learn that's not going to work, and it's painful, and this old trauma keeps showing up for some reason, and your survival system starts associating the positive affirmation with this pain, and positive affirmations then become more, you start avoiding them, you start looking away from them, you start not being able to see them anymore, and this is a sign that the affirmation was used too early, that there needed to be more healing work done before we just expected the brain to get in there and just create a new way of being.
Right.
That there's a lot more in front of it. Like if you think about this, it's like there's a line trying to get through this process. There's a line of unresolved issues that are trying to get through, and the brain has an order for those things. And if you want to bring something up, which we can do with using affirmations, and try to get it to the front, it's all the things in the back are going to be like, that's not your place, we've been waiting here this whole time. I mean, it's just
what are you doing?
You want it's like going into a store and there's a whole line. You're like, I'm going to be here forever. Yes. Or cut and see what happens to you,
No, never. I've seen what happens to those people.
Oh yeah. So we really want to do this old work because the brain wants to do the old work. And if we can give our brain what it wants, it will give us what we want. And then it can really shift and create new ways of being faster and faster and faster at real time, which is what is really creates that adaptability and flexibility and health and wellness in our lives, and being able to shift gears and try new things. And that's really where the health and wellness comes from.
Right. Now, is that why when, you're at a low point in your life and people try to compliment you like, "Oh, you're so loved," or blah blah blah,
Yes,
like they're giving you affirmations and you go, "No, I don't want to hear that garbage." Like, I don't
correct.
believe it. Is that kind of a
Yeah,
product of this? Oh, okay.
that's this working. That's this. That's the line of unresolved issues saying, "Get to the back, get out of here." You know,
Right.
we don't want you can't come through here. And there's lots of arguing, right? And that creates internal chaos, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then so it's almost people feel like don't say anything positive to me, because I don't want that. I don't want the line. I don't want to deal with the line. And so the real solution there is just be with that. I start working with the line, right? I mean, we just, especially, right, I've kind of created a mental construct of this line, right? So everyone's paying attention to their line and they can fill it in with their own people, their own issues,
Right.
right? We can just kind of conceptualize that and start using an intervention right there. Emotional freedom techniques are one of the other, and really start kind of spraying the crowd down with some healing sauce.
Mm-hmm.
And when you talk like this, like what I'm talking about, the subconscious mind loves this, because it's like, ooh, I know how to do that. And let me make that sauce. Oh, it's blue. Watch this, and you're actually getting the subconscious mind to do this work for you while you are talking to the survival system. And you're like, okay, go ahead, subconscious mind, do your work. I'm going to be here helping the survival system. Let's just stay out of the way and let everybody work. I think of it like a baby.
Right.
It works like a baby does. But then there's so many things that can get through like that. We can do a broad sweep of this concept, that because the brain also isn't like, there's so many tricks to working with it. It's not like there are ways you can just one at a time get them through, but there's lots of ways that you can really set the brain up to do a lot of big work really quickly,
Mm-hmm.
because it's not limited. It's just we sometimes are limited in our creativity in setting these things up.
Right. Yeah. It sounds like the main solution, well, one of them in simpler terms for my brain is like the brain just wants you to trust it. The subconscious just wants you to trust that it's gonna do the right thing.
Yeah, and it's always going to do the right thing.
Right.
Now, if your survival system likes it or not, it's a whole nother thing,
Mm.
but it's always on point. Your body, all the messages coming from your body, the stomach pains, the digestive distress, the ache in your shoulders, all of it is there to help you heal. Whether you can get the healing out of it, if whether the survival system will allow that or not, is a whole nother topic. But
Right.
everything is I have a lot of trust for it. If we're in a session and someone says, I don't know, I may be making this up, but I just feel so much pain in my shoulder right now. It's really sharp. I'm like, that's part of this stuff. Pay attention to that while we use this intervention. And it's always part of the body is right there. And it's all part of this neural network. You start pulling on one part of the network and all the other parts start coming in. And so it's really fascinating, and it's really cool because people can learn how to do this for themselves. And it's really fun when my clients start feeding me back, oh, and this came up, and then there was this, and like, and they're navigating and surfing their brainwaves, not their brainwaves, but like their neural pathways, it feels like, and feeling confident that they're helping their brain because they get the result.
Right.
Really.
Yeah. So how can people who are listening right now like start that process if they want to do it at home, or
Yeah.
they're listening and they kind of go, "Oh, I've got a couple symptoms that I should probably get to the bottom of." Like, how can they start?
Yeah. And that's the fun place to start. I've got a couple of symptoms. If you have more, your brain will say, oh, I tricked you. You just learned how to do those ones. And now that you have those skills, can you help me with this?
Right.
Um, but that's a really fun place because it's not, your brain will wait for you before throwing the whole enchilada at you. unless the whole enchilada is on you now and it couldn't hold it back any longer. Um, but So, having said that, the first thing I would say is learn an intervention. Just pick up an intervention and try it out, play around with it. I teach people 3 interventions. I send them out. I have a video series that I train my clients with to equip them with these interventions. These are the ones that we'll do most of the work with and that I've found work the fastest and that have the least amount of side effects. So I know that I can give them powerful tools that aren't going to create more problems for them. That even with their little skills, they're going to get results and it's going to be fun. I make that as a free gift in my email list so that people can learn 3 interventions from me. And so that's an option. You can Google these things, YouTube them, emotional freedom techniques, thought-filled therapy, energy medicine is one of my favorites, in EMDR. You can learn about them. And but give them a go. And it's like if you can see some relief, I would say give it 10 tries or a week before you say nope, that one doesn't work with me. I mean, if I'm working with somebody, I can really like we're trying them and I'm watching their brain function. I'm watching them and hearing them and then listening, and I'm seeing what I should expect to be seeing. And so it's really easy to match somebody with interventions or be like, oh no, that one doesn't work, let's try this one. But if you're doing this yourself, try it out for a week. Try it out on if you feel any symptom or you just don't feel good or something's annoying you, try it out on that. Just stop and use your intervention. And then I think when you find one that works and you want a process for using these interventions in a very specific and targeted way that helps you to actually resolve your whole anxiety, depression, or traumatic stress problem, I have an 8-week I have a program, an online self-study program that's available. And I also have an intensive coaching program that's also available where I personally walk you through this transformation and help you get the results. So both are awesome. Both are more than I had when I did my disorder. I just had this intervention and a little desire and Google.
Right.
I was snooping in on other people, other practitioners' work. What'd you do? How do you do this? So at any level, but I've really made that program available because it's what I use in my therapy practice. It's what I use to train my clients. I first started using this stuff wondering if I could help other people like I helped myself. Then once I did that, I noticed I can help them, but they still have a disorder. So then I was like, can I help them resolve their disorder? And then, yes, I can. Okay, but can I do it faster now? And that's when I really started teaching other people to do the work so that we weren't just waiting for sessions to do the work, that they could be working with their brain and rehabbing these processes and reconditioning and rewiring their brain between sessions and doing small projects that created massive transformation. And so doing that, my therapy clients resolve their disorder typically in 2 to 6 months. I have some people that are outliers on either end. I recently had a guy anyway, we resolved their PTSD from an accident in 2 sessions. And so there's always those sorts of things. Phobias are easy like that. Anyway, but those are the ways that I would suggest and I have made available and that I know work. And so, and then, I would just say, once you get going, your door is open for you, because once you know a little bit, then all of a sudden, right, your reticular activating system is like, oh, there's healing out here. Let me show you some more options. And those things you become aware of them, even though they were probably there the whole time.
Right. And now when they're in this process, how can they identify the difference between like, oh, I've dealt with a symptom, sorry, and I've eliminated a symptom?
Yeah. Say that was the beginning part of that question again.
Yeah, sorry. So how can they, like, when they're in this process, how can they finally identify the difference between, like, oh,
Right.
I'm managing this symptom and I've eliminated it?
Yes. And that is based on, does it show up anymore?
Right.
Uh, right. And so a lot of times, like panic attacks about driving, right? People have panic attacks about going over a bridge or driving on the freeway. What we want to do is we want to start working with the panic attack itself. and start resolving that. Um, Sometimes that's enough to get to the whole root because the whole problem is present in that moment. So sometimes that's it. And so when you can go drive and you don't have panic attacks.
Mm.
If you're driving and it's better, but you're still having panic attacks, then there's more root issue under there. And so you either keep applying interventions in the moments and see if that will help, or you really do need to learn some deeper strategies to get to the root issues.
Right.
Or to the root issue. And you'll know how many there are because you find a root and you resolve it, which one root is responsible for a multitude of symptoms,
Mm-hmm.
right? One glitch in your brain's programming can create lots of different problems in multiple areas of your life. And so when we find a symptom like anxiety, like a panic attack while driving, if we resolve this root issue of it and it's gone, you see it disappear from multiple areas of your life because it's a root issue. But we come back up to your driving and we want to assess, how's the driving going now? Do you still have panic attacks? And if the answer is yes, there's another root issue. So we're going to go find that too. It doesn't take a long time, so it's not a problem. We'll do 10, we'll do 100. We're still, because not only are we're healing the panic while driving, but all of these issues affect other aspects of their life. So we're doing massive shifts to the inner framework and foundation of who someone is, while focused on just this one goal. And so once we get that goal, we're done with that. And then they know that they're driving around and they're not panicking.
Right.
So that's really when you know that you've eliminated the symptom. And a lot of times the brain doesn't need a lot of help with it, but sometimes it really does.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I don't know when that will be. The brain tells me that, and it tells us by continued symptoms.
Right. I love it. Now, if my listeners are more interested in this kind of practice, like, where can they find you and your work?
Yeah, I am on my website. There we go, talking. My website is the place really to go. It's the hub, and it can connect you to everywhere I am. And that's rachelmccloud.com. And I'm going to spell that for you because my name is spelled differently, like Rachelle. So that's RACHELLEMCCLOUD.com. And there you can find me on Facebook. I have tons of videos there. I have 100 and some videos on YouTube. I have that. You can join my email list right there. You can start watching those videos and start playing with those interventions. You can join my Facebook group. Do all the things.
I love it. I'll put those links down below. Rachel, thank you so much for coming on. This has been a blast.
Thank you for having me.
And to all my listeners, I will see you guys next time.